everybody. Thank you for coming back again. We want to really thank you for coming back. I'm Scotty Helton, and this is my cohort,
Terry Hayes.
And we thank you again for clicking on the link that we either shared to you or you received a notification that we uploaded a new video, and you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to ask you, if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Did I say that right? YouTube channel. That's almost a tongue twister for us here in Tennessee. And click that notification button so you can be notified. And now we're going to be recapping a little bit, but I'd like to say, if this is the first video you have seen of Sacred Odyssey Videocast, I want to ask, before you can watch this one, but if you find yourself getting lost somewhere in our conversation, which we believe that's not going to happen because every videocast is fresh, but we want to challenge you to go back and bring yourself up to speed. It's not that hard. We do it all the time with I started to say Andy Griffith, but I just gave Andy a plug. So we do that often, and so it'd be great. And Terry, I want to add one more thing. I am also making audio, MP3 audios of these video casts. And if anybody would like to have just an audio to put on your phone or to take around so you can listen to, if you will get a hold of us, email or put in the notification down below the comments that you would like to have an audio of this, I will send you an audio free of charge. And that way you can kind of listen to it and pass it on. But hello, Terry. How you doing today?
Hey, Scotty. What's that radio station you got?
That radio station is
because we're playing the audios.
We're playing the audios,
station, right? And so people could plug into your radio station and hear these.
They can. You know, I haven't said anything about the radio during the first couple of videos, but it's powerfaithradio.com. We like to say, broadcasting from the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee, you're listening to Power Faith Radio. Now, my wife does that. I don't do that. She does that better than I do. But just simply go to powerfaithradio.com, click the link below to listen now, and it will take you to our radio station 24 hours a day. We've got some great teachers on there, Terry, some great Torah scholars. Matter of fact, Terry, I'm going to take this opportunity to give our personal rabbi a plug. Can I do that?
Go right ahead.
We got time. Rabbi Pesach Sherbo from Sfat, Israel. He is our personal rabbi, and he does a teaching /class /meeting every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did I say that right?
Yes.
And it's on a Zoom cloud, or you can catch that on the Facebook page, Torah for the Nations Facebook page. Go ahead, Terry.
He's broadcasting on his personal Facebook page, Pesach Sherbo.
Pesach Sherbo. But he now does have a web page, torahforthenations.org, right? .org. Yes. And Terry, I believe you are on there doing, you've got some blogs on there. Tell us about them before we go any further.
Oh, my personal blog, which I'm in the middle of writing another one. I kind of go with the inspiration kind of thing. So I'm not like putting one out every week, but it's emunatrek.com. And emuna is the Hebrew word for that's translated as faith. So it's emunatrek. And so my blog is about that rigid, arduous journey into true biblical faith.
Oh, wait a minute, Terry. That was great. I don't think I've ever heard you say that.
Hold on here. I gotta see something here real quick here.
You want to read that straight from the horse's mouth?
No. I'm just gonna I'll come back. Oh,
Emunatrek.
There we go.
And I see it.
That's my blog site.
Okay.
So if people want to, I've actually also got a couple of videos. I've got a YouTube channel. I haven't done anything in a while on there, but that's okay because I'm really loving what Scotty and I are doing here.
I, I, I
Having a
went,
partner is always better.
well, it depends on who you ask, but I went back and
Hey,
watched.
Laura and Hardy, come on.
Yeah, those Immunitrack videos are very informative. So I want to challenge everybody to take the time to find that on YouTube. I think I just typed in Immunitrack. It went straight to it. It was the top of the line. So obviously you're doing something right.
Yeah, but the blogs I've been doing for several years, since 2010, 2011, and you can see as how you read them, you'll see how I've even grown as a person in my own studies and stuff. And that's one thing Scotty and we're not afraid of. If we find something that maybe we misunderstood or something new, more deeper, we're ready to tag. We're not going to hide it. Not going to hide anything from that. But I do have some very interesting blogs out there.
They're
One
great.
of my favorites, it probably needs a little bit of updating. I think I wrote it in 2011 or so, called, oh, shoot. It deals with it's man and nature. And at the time when I wrote that, there was a lot of national disasters going on in the world. There was, I think, floods in Queensland, Australia, and different things. And it's read some stuff from some rabbis talking about, the gist of it, how when man turns from God, the earth turns from man. When man turns back to God, the earth turns back toward man. And we work together all in partnership. So that's one of my favorite oldies.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. Terry, let's do a little recap from last episode. I want to bring up something. You brought something out that I cannot get off my mind. And it was dealing with, if I can, it was dealing with this word right here, talking about these are the generations of Noah. And of course, it's Noah. Noah was in his generation a man righteous. And you were bringing out that was part of the beginning of his offspring. Um, Say that word again right there, Terry, and give us a recap on that position.
Toiledot, or dose, however you want to pronounce it, Ashkenazi, but toiledot. It's translated into English and using different words, as like I covered in the last videocast. Hold on, let me flip my page.
Have you still got that close handy?
Yes, I do. It's right here. Says these are in the ArtScroll translation. It translates the word toledot as offspring. It says these are the offspring, and it says, and then it gives us a list of words that word is translated. It says these are the offspring or generations, as we find here in the JPS.
Yeah.
Descendants, products, or history. And we went back and we looked at Genesis chapter 2:4 and Genesis 5:1, where it uses the word products and descendants in those sentences, but it was the exact same word. Yep. And so when we look, as a recap, we look at Noah, what the sages of Israel, the Torah scholars of great, when you read this in connection, it says these are the offspring of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. Noah had begotten 3 sons. See, this is after. Says these are the offspring. The offspring, the sages says, the offspring of Noah, before he begot flesh, had children, his offspring was righteousness, perfectness, and he walked with God.
So Terry, let me go off share just for a minute and bring everybody up to speed. The reason we're discussing this, we're traveling a position of righteous of the nations. We had a question come in and from a pastoral figure that we know that wanted to know the terminology of righteous of the nations. What does that mean? And so we thought that the best way to tackle that would first, let's talk about what does the word or the title righteous mean? And that's what got us to this point. So Terry, did we found out that that was deeds. So these deeds were an offspring of Noah. Is that what we discovered?
Yes. It was his deeds, his duty. Matter of fact, when we look at this is leading up to the issue where God's going to tell Noah that he's going to destroy the earth because of robbery and violence.
You want me to share this again, Terry?
If you want to.
Okay. I love being Terry's a Trekkie. He likes Star Trek. I just gave another plug. I don't know. Somebody ought to bless us with all these plugs we're giving.
I've got to get the T-shirt that every conversation ends up talking about Star Trek, because that's true with me.
Well, and Terry is the captain, and I'm Scotty down in the engine room. So I love sharing, throwing this stuff up to the captain's quarters and going, where do you want me to go at, Terry?
Down here was in verse 13, and God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence, and through them, and behold, I will destroy the earth. And he goes into talking about the ark and everything. And let me look at the Hebrew right here. Okay. Scotty, verse 13, first line in Hebrew, all the way to the last word.
All the way to the last word, right?
Right. Yes.
Right.
Actually, yeah. That word there is what's translated as robbery or violence in a lot of English translations. That word in the Hebrew is Hamas.
Say that one more time.
That Hebrew word is Hamas.
Hamas. And now what does that's the opposite of being righteous.
It's translated as robbery or violence. It says the earth. It says the earth was full of Hamas, the robbery and the violence.
Now I just got to say, we're talking about back then. We're not talking about today, right?
What do you mean?
The earth is full of that again, Terry. I don't know if you look out the window, but it's full of the opposite of righteous again.
It's full of Hamas.
It's full of Hamas.
And here's what's interesting. According to the guidelines of theft that we kind of touched on in our last video cast, all these people tearing down these statues is actually committing theft. We are not permitted, even though our neighbor owns a statue. Let's say he owns an idolatrous statue of some sort. We are not permitted to destroy it. Only the owner can do that. So we are not permitted to go onto another person's property, even though they have a wicked object. We cannot destroy it because we don't own it. And so again, the earth, when we look at what's going on in not just the United States, but these other nations around the world, and you see this violence and robbery going on, we're seeing it. But here's the thing, we're not the only generation that has seen this. It's just we are alive at this time, and we're getting to see these actions. These actions have never stopped.
Right. That's a whole topic right there.
Yeah, and one I hope we get to cover, because I really want to eventually get into the eternal covenant that God made with all mankind for eternity.
Oh, yeah.
I want us to. That's an episode I'm really looking forward to. Just to drop a little worm in the water there, and hopefully, let the viewers go, oh man, looking forward to that one. So are we.
So on a recap note still, we determined in our last videocast, that our actions not only affect us, but affect the people around us. Now, there's a position you was talking about that if Noah, I'm going to use Noah because that's what we're talking about. Noah was righteous. Did his righteousness protect his family?
when I look at this and see what's going on, and I read the chapter, read about what's going on. We read that Noah was, let's fall back to chapter 9 there.
Verse 9.
Verse 9. It says here that Noah was righteous in his generations. Okay. Let's see here.
I know I caught you off guard with that one, but
Well,
that's what we do.
No. What we need to understand that the world, when we look at the state that the world was in at that time, he was righteous according to the level of wickedness that was going on. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense.
He was righteous in his generation. Now, when the Creator set forth this process of going to bring a flood, build the ark, and all of that, who entered the ark with Noah?
His wife, his sons, and his sons' wives.
Do you read anywhere in the text of their spiritual status?
No. Now this opens a whole can of worms right here, Terry. No.
Okay. Now they entered in, and it's interesting. We were not going to get into this, but there's actually two listings of the way they entered and the way they came out. And the rabbis teach us why God told Moses to write these down as they do. It has meaning there. We just look over it, and we don't even think nothing about it. So it's one of the part of our desire at Sacred Odyssey is to get you to question and look at things that you didn't even know there was a question there. Like there is an order in which Noah's family entered the ark, and there was an order in which they exited the ark, and both of those have meanings. And so
wow.
This is what we want to do. This is all, like, we're coming back to here. We're looking at words, we're looking at sentences, and we're asking questions to get answers instead of just, oh, I've read the Bible.
Yeah.
A lot of people read the Bible, but they don't study it.
Correct.
We're going to study. We're going to look into things and bring out things you've never seen before, things we never saw before, things we're still learning. So Noah's family was allowed to go with him. The sages teach, now I'm going to use some terminology that's used in another religion.
Should I hold on to my seat?
The sages teach that Noah was the second Adam. Why? Adam gave birth. Through Adam, God brought forth the human race. All of that ended at the flood. The only thing that was there was Noah and his family. And God used Noah and his family to bring forth all of mankind that we have live today comes from Noah. As all of mankind before the flood came from Adam and Eve. I mean, we all come from Adam and Eve, but God started with one couple. This time he started with one family.
I think that is a position that's widely overlooked. And the reason that preservation, or that, if I'm saying this wrong, Terry, correct me, that second Adam mentality worked or happened was because Noah was righteous. The deeds he did preserved him.
Yeah. They preserved him, but he was righteous according to the wickedness. When we learn what the sages talk about, according to his generation, he was, righteous. And I want to share this with you as we're going from recap into, we're kind of be recapping and going back and forth. Our last video cast and this video cast is a continuation of a conversation.
Yes.
instead of two separate subjects. And practically, probably the next several video casts will be a continuation of this conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, we're talking about ancient sages and Torah scholars. Okay, that is, go back and check the last video. You'll understand.
Yes.
What we're
Yes.
talking about. Radach, who's a sage of Israel. He explains that the sense of the phrase, if we're talking about when Noah walked with God,
Yeah.
in verse 9 right there, we haven't really got a lot into that part of the verse. He walked with God, and we didn't get into the being perfect, which we can do that later. But it all ties. These are down the line from righteous, but this walk with God is the result of his righteousness. Is actually how he walked with God, was because of his righteousness. It says, but Roddick explains that the sense of the phrase that he walked with God is that he clung to God in every action for God's sake. He was not affected by the violence of his contemporaries, of his generation. He wasn't affected by that violence. You know, and I'd say he's a lot further down the road than where I am, even in our generation is not as bad as his generation. And I see what's going on and I get mad. So it affects me. He didn't even get mad. He kept a straight face and just went on and obeyed God and let the heathens be heathens. I have a hard time. I'm a Southern America. I have a hard time.
Yeah, that's me, Terry. I can't even offer a position on that on the grounds that it may incriminate me.
Yeah, I plead the fifth. We're going to use our American right. We plead the fifth.
Well, let's not talk about us. Let's talk about Noah. Let's talk about Noah.
The violence of, and I was just comparing the violence of the generations and our reaction. See, it's something we can learn from here. Our righteousness, we've got to learn to tap into the righteousness that God wants us to live and how we react to the society around us. We see here that it didn't affect Noah.
Well, Terry, that's something. A lot of times when we're talking to people, I don't want to use the word counseling. I just want to talk a casual conversation. That's what a lot of people are dealing with today. The things of this world, even religion of this world, of the Western world especially. I hear them get frustrated with it. But I'm about to bring up something, Terry, that I know you didn't know I was going to bring this up, but I'm going to bring this up. I call this the beaten wife syndrome. And I'm just going to throw this in your lap, and maybe you'll know of a Torah position that we can handle this with. And if not today, we might bring this up in a future video cast. But, they got the beaten wife syndrome where the husband will beat the wife. And at that time, I'm going to leave that. I want to leave that. I'm not going back to him. I'm not going to do it. And the very next day, bless your heart, she's right back over there. And I see the same thing happening in religion. People get frustrated with what's going on in their particular religion, and they want to leave it. You'll see where I'm going here just a minute. They want to leave that. They're beat, they're fed up, they're tired with it. It's affected them. I've had them come to me and say, what do I need to do? And of course I say, well, the best thing I can tell you to do is take a break and study. Know God for yourself. But the very next day, they're right back in that same thing. If we're not careful, we get caught up in that same thing over and over and over, just like what's happening around the world. You mentioned it last time. You mentioned it just a few minutes ago. It's happening around the world. If we're not careful, those things will affect us, what they're going through. And you know what I'm talking about? Am I making it plain, or have I went off on a rabbit trail and lost everybody out there? But those things, we have to get to where those things do not affect us. I'm heartbroken when I see people do what they do. I'm heartbroken when I see people get caught up in it, and their retaliation is just as bad, if not worse, than what the actual person's doing. But I'm talking about religion in general, because we're talking about not having a religion. We're talking about having a walk with God. Noah had a walk with God, and the things around him didn't affect him.
Right.
Help me, Terry. Say something. Get me out of this hole I dug.
My
I'm
mind,
leaning forward. I'm leaning forward.
mind, huh?
Go ahead. I'm just leaning forward. I'm just listening.
My mind, as you were speaking, went to Psalms chapter 1. So I want to ask the person that's going back, what is your desire? What is your true desire? Whether you're going back to, a wife-beaten husband, to a lay-beaten religion, whatever you want to title it. There has to be an inward desire. If you want it corrected, you've got to find out what that desire is inside of you. Psalms chapter 1, praiseworthy is the man that walked not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stood in the path of the sinful, nor sat in the session of scorners. But his desire is in the instruction of God, and his instructions he meditates day and night. Does that help any? That's where my mind went when you asked me that question, is the word desire. Do we desire the instruction of God? And so we could look at the situation that you're in, and if you'll study the instructions of God and study them, meditate on them, think on them, chew on them, so when you're in these situations, you'll know what to do. Because it says that the praiseworthy is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the path of unrighteousness or sinfulness, or sits in the sessions of scorners. That person has meditated on the instructions of God that keeps him out of those areas.
Now Terry, I know I took us over here and we didn't plan on going over here, but I need to ask you this question. I went ahead over here to Psalms. I think we'll go back here just in a second, but if you this is going to be tough. I didn't know it was going to go this way. Terry, if you go back into, I'm going to say religion, I'm going to say a falsified religion. If you know it's wrong and you do it, are those actions you do righteous?
So you're asking, let's say you're in a false religion, but you're doing righteous acts. Are they still considered righteous?
Sort of. That's what I'm asking. Yes. Is that you?
I'm going to put a yes and no, because here's the thing: we are all born. Every human being is created in the image of God. God breathed into Adam, and that same breath is transferred to you and I. Okay.
Yes.
So therefore, there is I hate the word instinct, but there is a knowledge within us of right and wrong. And there are people out there there are atheists out there that live according to right and wrong. They just know, they don't know why. It's not really righteous for them, but it's wisdom. They're wise. They are wise people. Where we cross the line from wisdom to righteous is the emphasis of our acts.
But
do we do it because it's just right or wrong, which is good. It's a good thing, a great thing, and it brings harmony on the earth, and that's what we want. But if you want to live that righteous life and walk with God, then you do them like Radek says here. He clung to God, and his every action was for God's sake.
That's powerful. One of the reasons I brought that up was the destruction of the people during Noah's time. Was it because of religion or the deeds they were doing to each other?
Deeds. No, nothing. about belief or religious status.
So it was
It was robbery in action. It was man to man. It was man. It was sin again. Man. It was sin. Man sinning against man.
so
Matter of fact, you done opened up a can of worms here.
I know it. I'm
when we look at and everyone, I implore, however you want to use the word, everyone watching this video, go and look for this yourself. Read about the flood in Genesis chapter 6. Read about Sodom and Gomorrah. Ezekiel 16 tells us why God destroyed them. Go check that out. Read the story of Jonah. The flood, Sodom, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, there were 5 cities, and Nineveh. God intervened in human affairs, and not one thing about faith, religion, spirituality. It was every situation on how we treated each other.
I wish people could get that. That's powerful, Terry. That's powerful.
That was an eye-opener for me several years ago. It was a life changer. It changed how I looked at my brother on the street. Living here in the South where I live is very religious. And I don't judge my brother by his belief or his faith. It's not my place. I judge how I treat them, because a person can be 100% right in their belief, but because they are 100% wrong in their action, they're not righteous.
Oh man, wait a minute. You gotta say that one more time, Terry. Say that one more time.
A person can be 100% correct in their belief, but if they're 100% wrong in their action toward another human being, they are not righteous. Their belief does not make them righteous. What they do to another human being is what defines righteousness.
So those things, what they do, that we're talking about, robbery, idolatry, all those aspects between man and man. We're talking about the moral things that God put in place, those parts of them that's between man and man, right?
Well, the idolatry and the blasphemy part is between you and God.
Between me and God.
They're still actions, but they're actions toward him. But when God gets angry, when he says, when you read there, now the earth became corrupt with God, and the earth became filled with robbery. God saw that the earth, behold, it was corrupt for all flesh. And God said to Noah, all flesh has come before me. Hold on here. Let me flip the verse here. And the earth is filled with robbery, and them said, behold, I will destroy the earth. And he talks about how he regretted making man. I mean, the part that God was regretted making man had nothing to do with man believed. It had how he was distraught with how man was treating each other. If you want to make God mad, you mistreat another human being. That is biblical.
Whew. That is there hope for us, Terry?
But here's the clincher. I know we wasn't gonna look, but this is still the conversation of righteousness.
Yeah.
It says that, I mean, matter of fact, flip over. I use it.
No. I'll go back, Terry. Tell me where to go.
Go to Genesis chapter 9.
Genesis chapter 9.
I might have to look down and find the verse. Hold on, don't go too fast. Verse 6.
Verse 6.
Whoever, this is the Creator speaking to Noah, and he's speaking to us, the descendants of Noah. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. That's a topic right there. There's actually 2 principles of moral guidelines or behavioral guidelines right here. One, murder. Another, setting up a just court, because it takes a court for it to happen on this thing. But it says, whosoever shed blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man.
Now,
So when we look at murder on an aspect, the reason why we're not supposed to murder is right there in the end of the sentence. For in the image of God made man. So now let's look at it. We don't steal from man. We don't murder man. We don't do this to man. We don't do that to man. Because everything we do to our fellow human being, we do to God.
oh, Terry.
So when we do righteous acts, as we discussed in our previous video, when we choose to do righteous actions toward fellow humans, we are doing that to God. Thus, we're walking with God. Not the other human is not God, but our acts, our righteous actions, and we do these because that person carries the image of God, so we do it for the sake of God. Then we're walking with God, because everything we do to another human being, we're doing to the image of God in that other human being. That's the reason why I'm just going to throw it out. I don't want time, date, anything. I don't like racism. Because when you hate another person because of the color of their skin, in which they had no choice, and they're created in the image of God, then you need to tell God there's something you don't like about him.
Oh man.
So we don't have room for racism when we're righteous, because
preach.
everything we're talking about righteousness is walking with God, and walking with God is treating every human being with kindness and justice and righteousness because of the image of God that is in that person.
That's now this this just opens up a whole new kettle here.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That's good, because
I've been needing to say that for about a week.
We need to realize that the righteousness that I apply in my life, I've got to be able to control that. I think we talked in one position about having the free will to control that what I do, and I need to not direct that. I need to not be racist. I don't know if there's another terminology I was trying to think of right there. Not be biased.
Again, the whole issue with murder, according to Genesis chapter 9, is because of the image of God. So now let's look at it. Theft. We used in the last video the example. You go to the store, you buy a Coke, and you got 50 cents, more than you should have. If you decide to keep that 50 cents, guess who you stole from? You stole from your neighbor, but you stole from God. You go up and you slap your neighbor, you slap God. I'm not saying these people are God. I'm saying the image of God is in them.
Yes, yes.
His breath from Adam is still in them. And we haven't, as a human race, got this down yet. And this is how we can correct the world. Tikkun olam in Hebrew, correct the world. Get this message out. Every human being, regardless of race, nationality, language, financial status, it doesn't matter who they are, whether they're living in a palace or they're living on the street, they all are the image of God is within that person. And what we do to that person is whether we're righteous or unrighteous.
That's powerful, Teddy. Teddy, I got a friend named Teddy that's thinking of me right now. That's powerful, Terry. He must be going to be listening to this. That's one of them prophetic things, blah, blah, blah.
Right. But we're talking about righteousness. And so I'm going to continue on from what the Ramban, which is an acronym for Rabbi Moshe ben Nachmanides.
A great Torah scholar.
A great Torah scholar. He says, he goes on and says about Noah. Noah feared God alone and was not enticed by astrology, and certainly not about idolatry. He walked in the way God taught him. So what we're saying is Noah was not involved with the religions of his generation. Walking with God is not a religion.
That's great, Terry. That's great. Aren't you glad I didn't call you anybody else?
Call me to supper's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Or actually breakfast when there's biscuits and gravy on the table.
Terry, I know we're into that, but there's one more text you had talked about you would love to get into. And do you feel like getting into that,
If you
Ezekiel?
want to, what's our time looking like? I know we kind of
Well,
rabbit trailed a little bit.
we're at 40 minutes, Terry.
Well, we can if you want to.
Okay, let's
our videos are hitting at about an hour.
They are.
We set out to want to do a half hour. Well, we can't get a drink of water in that.
We can't get a drink of water in that time. And do we want to go straight down to verse 20 in Ezekiel 18, or where do you want to go?
Yeah, in line in the conversation. I like this in the conversation on righteousness or righteousness. It's a conversation. I like it. Ezekiel chapter 18 holds a lot of things. A lot of things we're not going to get into. So, moving our little pictures here. We've been talking about righteous being the actions, what we do to another man, what we do to our God, the righteous acts. And we do, and righteousness, like we said, is because, like Roddick says, he done every action for the sake of God. That's us. If we want to be righteous, if our desire is to be righteous, and we're not talking about a spiritual,
right?
You know, we're not talking about that. That's religion speaking to you. If your heart wants to desire God and his ways, then we walk in them. And the way we walk in them is we consider how we act toward him and act toward man.
Now you're talking about my everyday life, my
everyday
walking
life.
On this planet, walking on this creation that God created. How I
don't have the reference or the context right now, but there's several times I can find them. If someone's interested, or they can use Rabbi Google and find them. It says the righteous shall inherit the earth.
Yes.
So therefore, it's our actions. God created the earth, and then he gave it to us as a gift. And the righteous will inherit the earth for eternity. It's ours. God made it. And the thing about it is he didn't complete everything. He wants us to be partners with him. And so when we partner with him and we walk in righteousness for his sake, when our actions are because of him first, when that's in our mindset, we don't have to go and say, oh, I'm not going to do this because God doesn't want me to. Have that in your mind. Let that be in your core. Let that be your being, that you're not going to do such and such because God told me that's not what he likes. He doesn't want me to do it. Yeah, there's do's and there's don'ts. But in English, it's hard. We just got to get that in our soul that God doesn't like this kind of action. So I'm not going to do it for his sake. Then we look at what does God want me to do? Well, that's to treat his creation with kindness, whether it's it's first a human being. Then we learn to take care of his creation, whether it be an animal or a plant or the earth itself. And we treat it with kindness and with righteousness. We think about throwing a Coke can out the window. That falls on how we're treating the earth.
Yeah.
Our gift. We're you know what I'm saying? So even throwing a cup out the window can come down the line, because righteousness is a category. It's not a just blanket. It's just a headline. There's more to the story, and it goes between how we treat one another and how we treat how the animals, we treat the plants, we treat the earth. All of this can be righteous acts, and it keeps growing. The longer there's every day I think of something, or I run into something like, oh man, I just didn't do that just right the way I should have. you know, and so we're all learning and growing to the day we are all, you know, we completely inherit the earth, the 6-foot box. We're all guaranteed to have. But Ezekiel 18.
Terry, before you read that, I'm sorry, before you read that, I remember watching a small video, and this young man was on there, and he made a statement, and I still hear a lot of people today say, well, you know, it's hard for me to do, that's hard for me to do, that's hard for me to do, you know, those things that are righteous deeds. But I really like what this young man said. He said, the things that you practice, you become good at. If you practice hatred, you'll become good at hatred. But if you practice doing good, you'll become good at doing good. And I just thought that was, I just want to throw that in with what you were sharing there. So, okay, I'm bringing, because I know we're going to have to come to a close. I'm bringing up Ezekiel 18 and verse 20, Terry.
All right. We're going to talk about, this is still tying into the conversation of the subject of righteousness, righteous of the nations. In verse 20 it says, the soul that sins, and I'm going to be honest with you, the Hebrew word for sin is not what the Western religion teaches. I actually don't like the English in a lot of ways, but this is what I have to work with. But we'll go through a textual look at what sin is according to the Hebrew scriptures in a future video.
I would love to do that, Terry. I'd love to do that.
Matter of fact, I did a teaching one time on this subject, really, out of Genesis chapter 4, and so maybe we can redo that sometime.
Yeah.
The soul that sins, it shall die. Now, this isn't talking about your body, you're dying. It's talking about the soul, the nephesh, which is part of your soul. I won't get into that. It's another whole.
We're getting in some deep stuff here, but we're going to come back to this verse in a future videocast.
The soul that sins, it shall die. A son shall not bear the iniquity of his father, and a father shall not bear the iniquity of his son. The righteousness of the righteous person shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked person shall be upon him. Now understand, this is God. These are the words that God spoke to the prophet Ezekiel. Okay? This is hundreds of years before the advent of much of the Western religions that we have today. Hundreds of years before. These are words from God himself. I find it interesting that there's all before. Maybe he didn't know what was going to come down the road.
Yeah.
So this is an explanation. So if the righteous is on the righteousness, that tells us they're righteous people. Another whole story, another whole episode. Genesis chapter 18. God's coming to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of their wickedness. And like I said, go to Ezekiel 16, and it talks about the wickedness against man.
Mm-hmm.
She was a wealthy city, but yet she hated strangers. She hated the poor. And so they had actual laws against being poor and stuff. But Abraham came to the Creator, and he says, "But what if there's 50 righteous?"
So what was that? Genesis what again?
Genesis 18.
Genesis 18.
He says, "Well, so I want y'all to think about this. And have you ever thought about? You just read this as a story, Sunday school, read it in your part of your daily reading of your Bible. Wait a minute here. Abraham said, "Is there 50 righteous?" Remember, Mount Sinai hasn't happened yet.
This is true.
The nation of Israel hasn't been born yet.
So what was
as a nation? This is still dealing with the time period of Noah.
So what was the judgment of righteous or unrighteous? What did they have? What was the guidelines?
The same guidelines that made Noah righteous. And we'll get into that. So before any advent of Western religion that we have today, Abraham is questioning God. Well, what about the righteous? As a positive statement that there are righteous down there. What if there are righteous people there? Are you going to destroy them with the wicked?
So what he's saying is, what if there are some people down there that have good deeds?
Right. That are doing them for the sake of God. That's what he's at. He says he even got down to, what was it? 10?
10.
10. Technically, there's 5 cities. Was it two men in every city? If there's only 2 people in the city who are walking with God for his sake, that would have saved those cities.
Out of all the vast, if it was just 2 in each city, 10
cities.
righteous.
Oh, wait a minute. I mean, 5 cities. There's 5
cities, 10 people. He would have saved
5 cities of the plains of Sodom.
And of course, there
wasn't.
There was not.
There wasn't not even 2 people in one city that was observing the behavioral guidelines given to Noah that he passed down to Abraham, which that's another whole story. Shem, his son, was a righteous teacher, righteous king. We'll get into that later. But Noah passed down these guidelines that he learned from Adam. And if 2 people would have been doing these for the sake that God wanted you as a human being to act like this and that, it would have saved those cities. So, but my main emphasis is, it says here, the righteous is on the righteousness. I mean, the righteousness is on the righteous. That's telling us there are some righteous people.
Yes.
Because wickedness is on the wicked. The wickedness is on the wicked. So there are wicked people. Right. Righteous of the righteous shall be upon. Yeah. And so I just wanted to bring this out to you, to the, we're talking about righteous. We're going back to the beginning, laying the foundation of understanding what righteous means, showing that the issue of righteousness has nothing to do with faith. It has everything to do with action. And then it goes on, it says, as for the wicked man, the Rasha, in Hebrew, the Rasha, if he repents, and repentance doesn't mean, oh, I'm sorry. Repentance means he quits doing what he was doing that made him wicked. And he stops doing those acts of wickedness.
So he's got the ability to change.
He has the ability to change. It says, as for the wicked man, if. See, it's a choice. The wicked man has to choose to stop doing wickedness. And if he chooses to stop doing wickedness, it says, from all the sins that he has committed, this is an action. Sin is an action. And we're going to get into that. Sin is an action. Because it says he committed. It's not sins he thought of.
Right.
It's sins he committed.
He carried them out.
He carried them out. If he stops doing them, and he observes all my decrees and practice. Oh, there's that word. What did you say about practice a while ago?
Yeah.
What was your
if you practice it, you become good at it.
You become good at it. So it says here, it says, and practices mishpat and tzedakah. What would he say tzedakah? Remember in our last video, tzaddik, the Hebrew word for righteous is tzaddik. Tzedakah is a righteous act. And so it's right here. Mishpat means the rules, the instructions, the laws, justice. and righteousness. He says if he practices righteousness, if he practices tzedakah, the righteous acts, practice, doing, he shall surely live and not die. All his transgressions that he committed, all the wrong things he did before, his repentance, his stopping of the wickedness, will not be remembered against him. And get this closure. And he shall live because of the righteousness that he did. Not believed, not had faith in, but he will live because of the righteousness, the tzedakah, the tzaddik, that he did.
Terry, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I don't even know how to bring that to a close other than it's time to close.
I know. We really, the last two episodes has given a lot of meat to chew on.
A foundational principle for righteous.
For righteous. So, and I just want to say, if your religion says righteous is opposite of what we just read in the Hebrew scriptures, I would really think about it.
Yes.
So now what we've done is put a choice in front of everyone to make a choice. Do we accept what the Creator has given us since the time of Adam? For 2,000 years, this is, and beyond, this is what he has judges man. He doesn't just judge man arbitrarily. He's not an angry God. God is using justice to judge us. These are the weights and the balances that he judges us by, and it's never changed. You know, these behavioral guidelines, and there's only 7, like 7 days of the week, 7 colors in the rainbow. There are 7 behavioral guidelines that are eternal. And so we've put before you, again, we don't walking with God is not a religion. So we ask you to look, what does your religion say versus, I'm just going to put it, what does God say?
Yeah.
And I you know, we may lose some people, Scotty. I don't know. But I mean, I had to come to this decision on my own. You had to come to this decision on your own. We didn't even know each other at the time, you know. And there's thousands of people all over the earth that are going through this very thing right now.
They're hunting truth.
We've met people from Peru. We've met people from over in Russia. Starts with a K. You know, we've met people over there in Russia. We've met people down in Paraguay. We've met people in Brazil. I know a lady that lives in Grenada, in the islands of Grenada. Every one of these people have come to these, what we've been talking about the last 2 videocasts. People all over the world is coming to this through their own journey.
Yeah. Through
their own journey, we've all come to this. So it's interesting. It's really not a somebody out handing out tracts and everybody's getting saved. Sorry, but that's just, they're coming to this stuff on their own, and they're talking about, how do I live the way God wants me to live?
Yeah.
And it's making changes in people's lives all over the world. I think we was in a class the other day, there was about 14, 15 nations represented.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really, I mean, amazing people from all over the world that we've met that are like coming to this, how do I live, you know, righteously with God?
This knowledge. Yeah. Yeah. So
this was a good conversation to start with.
So Terry, let me as we come to a close, let's just briefly say that now that we have covered what it means to be righteous, next video cast, let's discover what it means to be the righteous of the nations. And
You want to get into the behavioral guidelines?
I really think we need to get into the behavioral guidelines, because that's what separates the big fish from the little fish. I was trying to think of a good way to say that. But that's what separates. That's what shows forth. Having these behavioral guidelines show if you are truly the righteous of the nations. And I'll tell you what. I know you said there were 7. We commonly feel that
there's 7 categorical.
7 categories. 6 was in place before Noah, and 1 after Noah. But if you get these working in your life, these deeds coming from you and affecting you and the people around you, especially your family, you can become the righteous of the nations.
I mean, just kind of like what you just said right there. One of the things that I can't forget is teaching that Rabbi Brody, who lives in Ashdod, Israel, taught on your livelihood, about your job. It was really good. Your job is a classroom on how to walk with God. Yes. Because there's so many things in your job that happens to test you in these guidelines.
Yes. Well, Terry, we're going to come to a close. I want to just say thank you, everybody, for spending the time, staying with us throughout this entirety of this video cast. I want to challenge you to go back and watch the future video casts. And again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that notification button. And so you can be notified as we upload new videos. And especially if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get a hold of us and put it in a comment down below, or look for us on Facebook. We're not hard to find. But I want to reiterate something we said in our introductory video, Terry. We're not going to argue with anybody. We're not going to debate. We are just going to present the text. And that's what we've been doing, Terry. We've been presenting the text. You can't argue with the text. You can't argue with that. So we want you to subscribe to us, come back, participate in our video casts. Teddy, you got any last words to say?
No, I just always enjoy when we get together and we start talking about the Torah, the instructions of God. I really enjoy sharing what I've learned, with others. And, I got a hope and a desire that as we all learn these, we make our homes better, the street we live on better, the city we live on better, the state we live in, or the country we live in. This is all groundwork when we begin on this conversation of righteousness and we start treating other human beings and know that the image of God is in each one of them.
Yes.
And we reflect on how important that is in our mind, in our thoughts and our deeds. We will be, just like the Michael Jackson song, we want to change the world. We start with the man in the mirror. And that's really, this is where righteousness begins. It starts with the man in the mirror.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in to Sacred Odyssey.
Yes.
I want an intellectual and spiritual quest. Truly, that's what we are on.
Yes.
So thank you again. And until next time, Baruch Hashem.
Yes. Bye-bye.